Great to see you. Hey, before we get started, I have a few announcements that I need to let you know about. We have a few people who are joining the Timberline team. One of them has been part of the team for a long time, but she's officially coming onto the team. And I don't know where she went, but it's Leah. She's the one up here that was singing. My wife, yeah. So she's coming onto the team. And then also, Buddy, if you can stand up, Buddy, and your wife, yeah. Can you guys stand up, Stevie and Buddy? This is Stevie and Buddy. Guys, I really believe, and I know I'm going to embarrass you guys for just a second, and it's really awkward to keep standing, but I really believe, guys, that God has sent them here to Timberline for this time. I really do. And they've been such a godsend to us, even in the short time that they've been here. And if anyone has heard Buddy lead worship so far, you know just how the anointing of God falls in the room. And if you can imagine even better than that is his wife, and how I'm just playing. So just give us a little tune. Can you I'm just playing. And so anyway, I'm just super happy that you guys are here, and they are officially on the Timberline team now. So you guys give them a hand. So, so some cool stuff that's going on, guys. We're really happy about what God's doing and how he continues just to expand things, and we're just kind of along for the ride. You know what I mean? Anyone ever felt like that? Okay, I'm the only one? Okay, thanks. Thanks for that. So last week, we weren't here. We kind of had, it was kind of like one of those good, bad trips, you know what I mean? We had to go to Temple, Texas for a funeral that was kind of out of the blue. So that was the bad part, but the good part was that Leah and I, we've been married for almost 18 years, and 3 years ago, we were going to celebrate this 15-year anniversary with a trip. But my sister's baby decided to come at that exact moment, and so we didn't get to go on that trip, and because life gets crazy and kind of gets away from you, we didn't celebrate it for another 3 years. So we decided to go ahead and swing through San Antonio and make a trip out of it. You know what I mean? And so we got to go to the Riverwalk. Anybody been to the Riverwalk in San Antonio? Just incredible. It'll blow your mind. So we went to the Riverwalk, and I don't know if you guys have ever been in one of those like atmospheres or situations where you feel like everyone around you is trying to take advantage of you. Anybody? You know, like they want your money. They're like circling you as you're walking down the sidewalk. And of course, here we are. We're just kind of like la la la. And this guy is just like, hey, how long you guys gonna be here for? And we're like, whoa, a friend, And so we start talking to them. And next thing you know, we're sitting down to hear this timeshare presentation. And this guy's looking me in the face, and he's just like, you guys, asking us all these questions. And I'm like, I'm not real sure how I got here. Like 5 minutes ago, I thought I'd made a new friend, but now I'm sitting next to you. And anyway, so has anyone been through a timeshare presentation? All right, okay, I feel better about myself, though, because you kind of feel like, how did I get here? Like, I know I said yes to something, but I'm not real sure what it was. You know what I mean? So, that happened. And then we decided we went over to SeaWorld. Any SeaWorld fans in here? And that was incredible. You have these memories of childhood growing up, and that was one of the ones that really stuck out to me. And so I kept telling Leah, like, we've got to go back to SeaWorld, And so we went to SeaWorld, and when you remember something as a child, and then you get there, and you're like, not as cool as I thought, Well, it was kind of like that, but SeaWorld was still really cool, and I kept thinking, I just feel bad that our kids aren't here. But then we were walking down the sidewalk, and I got a whiff of something that just changed my whole day, and it's this thing called a churro. Any churro fans in here? Yeah. And I don't know if they sell them anywhere else, but I only see them at theme parks, and it's like that's part of the experience. You got to get a churro, And so we decided to go get one, and obviously, the prices aren't well marked, and so. But it didn't matter. I needed a churro, and Leah got one, and then we go up to the cash register, and they're $4 a piece for a churro. And I'm thinking, it's worth it, right? It's worth it, And we keep going on, and then, obviously it kind of becomes lunchtime, and you can't bring any food into the park, so what do you have to do? You got to buy food at the park. And so we went into this pizza place, which is kind of, I think they're being pretty generous with the pizza description because it's basically just like cheese on cardboard. You know, you ever had a piece of pizza like that? That's what it tasted like. And I'm just like, but it fortunately is only $34, for both of us to eat this cheese on a cardboard. And I came out walking from that place, and I was saying this kind of revelation hit my mind. Is like, and it's this, that a hungry need is a dangerous need. I was hungry in that moment, and then in those moments where you get hungry, it doesn't matter the price. If there's nothing else around, you're going to buy what you have to buy in order to satisfy that hunger. Anybody else been in that position before? Or maybe you're in a position to where, you're close by somewhere where you it's not good for you to eat there, but you're super hungry, so you're going to go ahead and eat there anyway. Let me rephrase that. Anybody ever been to McDonald's? That kind of a feeling, you're like, I can't pass by, 5 Big Macs for $5. I mean, that's a crazy deal. That's amazing, And all the time in the back of your mind, you're thinking, this isn't good for me, but it tastes so good. Those kind of moments where you have this need in our life, this hungry need, and so that's what I'm going to talk to us about today, and I feel like that God has laid on my heart. And what's funny is that there's these moments in my life, guys, where, spending time with God, and it's just like, boom, this is what you need to talk about. This message wasn't one of those. In fact, I think I was still thinking about what we're supposed to talk about around 6 o'clock yesterday. And finally, it was like, I don't know what it was, but you ever had that writer's block thing go on? And so, but I was just sitting there on my bed and I was praying, and it just hit me like that remembrance of walking through the park and being so hungry that it didn't matter what the cost was, I was willing to pay it. And it was really just like God just continued to remind me that a hungry need is a dangerous need. Now, a couple weeks ago when we spoke, we had 3 chairs up here. And we had a chair on this side that kind of looked like a lazy boy. We had a chair right here in the middle that was wooden but had some padding on it. And then we had a chair over here that was wooden. It was all wood. And what we labeled those is we had the chair of commitment, the chair of conflict, and the chair of compromise. And we talked about how what Satan likes to do is he tries to get us to come out of this chair and go to this chair of conflict, and then eventually even slide down to this place called compromise. And we labeled it the unsanctified slide. For those of you guys who were here, for those of you guys who weren't here, that's kind of where I'm going with today, because what I really wanted to focus on was this chair of conflict. Because if you're like me, what happens in my life is I have these moments to where I am 100%, I'm all in, my focus is where I know it needs to be, my hunger is where I know it needs to be, and I feel like I am positioned in this chair called commitment. But then there's these other moments in my life where maybe that hunger gets a little bit crazy, and I start to crave things that don't come from this chair, and now I start to find myself in a chair called conflict. And we sit in a chair called conflict in our life a lot of times, and that right there is the deciding point on if we're going to go down to compromise or if we're going to go back up to commitment. And I really believe, guys, that there's a lot of things that can play into that, and there's several different things that can, dictate what happens in that moment. And one of those is, these aren't the ones we're going to talk about today, but one of them is our priorities. If our priorities get misaligned, we can come into a place of conflict. And then if we don't readjust those priorities, we'll eventually slide down to a place of compromise. What does that look like? It looks like, let's say that you are a married couple with children. Now, the way that God has designed the priorities to go is that God should be first, and then your spouse, and then your kids, and then the church. Everybody with me on that? So what can happen a lot of times is we can start to shuffle those things around, and they look really good. Well, my kids should be put first, but what starts to happen is my relationship with God starts to slip. My relationship with my spouse starts to slip. I start to have conflict in my life, and if I don't adjust God to the number one position, I'm eventually going to slide down to compromise. Does that make sense? Another one that is dangerous in that place, guys, is this thing called comparison. where we sit in conflict and we let comparison start to take over our thoughts and our focus. We start to look over here at so-and-so and just how gifted they are. We start to look at this marriage over here and how perfect it looks or how perfect their children look. And we sit here and we start to compare our life to that life. And then what starts to happen is we even start to wish that our life was that life. My life is hell at home. My life is chaotic. My life is this. My life is that. Man, if my life was just like that, if my kids acted like that, if my spouse was like that, and we start to compare our life to someone else's life, and eventually we sit here in conflict, and if we don't adjust our thinking, we will slide down to compromise. You with me? But the one that I really want to focus on today, guys, is this thing called a hungry need, because the same thing happens. If we have a need in our life that becomes so overwhelming that it starts to bring conflict inside of our hearts, inside of our spirits, we'll sit in a place of conflict for years and let life just kind of pass us by. So what we need to do is be able to adjust that need, because it's okay to have need, but the question is, where is your need answered? That's the question. Because there's actually only one place that can satisfy the need of your life. Go to Genesis chapter 25. We're going to read a story about this whole thing. Genesis chapter 25, we're going to start at verse 24. A hungry need is a dangerous need. All right, it says this. It says, when the time came for her to give birth, there were twin boys in her womb. The first to come out was red. His whole body was like a hairy garment, so they named him Esau. Now, can we just pause for a moment and appreciate that picture? That he was like a hairy garment. You know, that's the... Wouldn't you hate to be the people in the delivery room for that one? You know, because you know you're supposed to be like, oh, a baby, you know. And this hairy garment comes out and everyone's just like, ugh. After this, his brother came out with his hand grasping Esau's heel, so he was named Jacob, which means deceiver. Isaac was 60 years old when Rebekah gave birth to them. The boys grew up, and Esau became a skillful hunter, a man of open country, while Jacob was a quiet man staying home among the tents. Isaac, who had a taste for wild game, loved Esau, but Rebekah loved Jacob. Once, when Jacob was cooking some stew, Esau came in from the open country, famished. He said to Jacob, quick, let me have some of that red stew. I'm famished. Jacob replied, first, sell me your birthright. Look, I'm about to die, Esau said. What good is the birthright to me? But Jacob said, swear to me first. So he swore an oath to him, selling his birthright to Jacob. Then Jacob gave Esau some bread and some lentil stew. He ate and drank and then got up and left. So Esau despised his birthright. Now for us, that's not something that's talked about a whole lot in our culture, this thing called a birthright. So this is what a birthright really stood for. A birthright included not only in a traditional biblical sense, it was this superior rank in the family. They were the leaders of the home once the father passed on. It was a double portion of inheritance, literally a double portion of inheritance, okay? It was the priestly office in the family. Now, those are all things that applied to any kind of normal birthright, but the family that we're talking about right now is from the family of Abraham. We heard of Abraham before? Now, God gave a promise to Abraham, and he said that his descendants will be as numerous as the stars in the sky, that they would be a blessing to every nation. So not only was Esau giving up this normal birthright, which included the double portion of inheritance, the priestly right in the home, those kind of things, but he also let Jacob take his place in the line of Abraham, which was going to be a blessing to nations to come, which is you and me sitting in this room. Now, if you've ever been around church very long, you start to hear this phrase, the father of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Now, think about this. What it should have been was the father of Abraham, Isaac, and Esau. So he was so hungry, he had this crazy hungry need that actually was a physical hunger inside of him to the point that he thought he was going to die. So he comes up and he sells it to his brother, right? We all seen this picture take place? So he gives up his birthright, the double portion of inheritance, the priestly right in the home, the lineage from his father Abraham, the blessing of the nations for what? A bowl of soup, basically. Some bread and some soup. He gave it up for a... Now, if you've ever been through that before where you are just crazy, super hungry, and then finally you eat, what happens about 6 hours later? You're crazy, hungry, and ready to eat again. So he gave up his inheritance for something that only satisfied for just a little while, hours. He gave up something that would seriously impact millions of people to come for something that would just last for a little while. And I know what we do. We can sit at that story, right, and we can look at it and be like, that's crazy. I cannot believe that he would do something like this, right? Can we all see that? But the reality is what? We do the exact same thing. If we're being honest with ourselves, we can do the exact same thing. And a lot of times we do the exact same thing. It might not be a bowl of soup, but it can be something else. See, what I want you to see is these things that they described, it was called a superior rank in the family, a double portion of inheritance in the priestly office of the family. And we don't see those so much described like that today, but let me put it like this. A superior